The death of Hana Kimura this past week is a complicated story about reality shows, the worst aspects of social media and cyberbullying, and likely with the unique aspects of the time we are living in. The end result was the suicide death of a 22-year-old woman who had high-level stage presence and a unique look, and was likely to explode in 2020 had this been a normal year, as the most marketable and biggest star in Japanese women's wrestling. The story has far wider implications in so many different ways than most pro wrestling stories. Its repercussions, besides her own death, include the possibility of the end of a popular worldwide television show, and even more, talk in Japan about enacting new legislation that would make cyberbullying a more serious crime. While obviously a huge news story in Japan, it garnered a lot of mainstream attention in the US due to the popularity of the television reality show Terrace House. Terrace House, the show she was a cast member in, was a major prime-time show on the Fuji TV network, where it usually drew 5 to 6 million viewers. But it also had a large following outside of Japan, on Netflix, where it airs with English subtitles. Netflix doesn't release viewer numbers, but the show was said to have delivered numbers well above what was expected for that type of a show. On May 22, the day of her death, Terrace House and Hana Kimura was the most searched topic in the US on the internet, with more than 500,000 searches, just ahead of Joe Biden. Kimura was suffering from bad depression for some time even as her wrestling career was on its ascent. She had mutilated her arms and cut her wrists in the past. The turning point was an incident on the reality show where people wanting to be celebrities are put together with both scripted and unscripted scenarios to attempt to create relationships and relationship dramas. By American reality show standards, Terrace House is actually quite tame, and the incident that led to her death would be at best a minor talking point on a show like Jersey Shore a few years ago. Kimura was on the show starting in September, considered a major coup by the Stardom promotion to get her a mainstream following with the goal of making her and Julia the two biggest stars in the company. The idea was to create a mainstream star in what is right now a very niche genre and expose her to a large network prime-time television audience. Although very pretty and charismatic, because of her muscular shoulders as compared to most Japanese women, she stood out for her look as compared to some of the other women celebrities. While outgoing on the pro wrestling stage, in real life she was shy and noted being very inexperienced in relationships with guys. That was actually part of her charm in the early weeks. Her character was viewed very positively in the early episodes. It should be noted that Kimura went through a lot of bullying when she was growing up. Her mother, Kyoko Kimura, was a woman pro wrestler who competed a lot in death match style. Hana Kimura was of mixed ethnicity. Her father, who split from her mother and her when she was 1, was Indonesian, so she was half Japanese and half Indonesian. This gave her unique features, but while growing up in school she was taunted over being different. She grew up around pro wrestling, attending shows with her mother. She even won the DDT Iron Man heavy metalweight comedy title in 2005, think WWE 24/7 title at a show in Tokyo when she was 8 years old. She immediately lost it to her mother. Because of wanting to be a pro wrestler, she lifted weights and had, as compared to a usual Japanese woman, big shoulders and athletic arms and legs, but when people turned on her, they was mocked for that as well. Obviously Hana is very beautiful, said one person close to her to us regarding the show, but on the show, she is like twice the size of the other girls. And on the show, and in real life, she is very self-conscious because she has huge muscular shoulders compared to the other girls, and Terrace House fans also bullied her about that kind of stuff. It seems silly, because she is a very pretty girl, but it just goes to show that anyone can have self-confidence issues. You'd think from the looks of it this girl would have it all. Very obviously she's the one being pushed to lead her company. During the filming of the show, Kimura, a male comedian cast member named Kai, and 2 others, Yumi and Sacho, went on a double date in Kyoto. Kai talked his career and showed a romantic interest in Kimura, but he was broke, and when they did the double date, he didn't pay for it because he didn't have any money. Sacho, who owns a business and wanted the idea of a double date because of his interest in Yumi, was willing to pay for it. Kimura was mad at Kai for not paying for the date in their Airbnb rental when in a bath with Yumi, the other woman. Some fans of the show were mad because they wanted Kimura and Kai to hook up, and it was clear that wasn't going to happen. But the actual storyline came later, in a show taped during the week of January 19 to January 25, and aired on March 31. Kimura had put her wrestling costume that she had been using of late in the washing machine. Kai put his own clothes in the washing machine. He then came back and threw his clothes and her wrestling costume in the dryer, which shrank it and ruined it. When she found out, she started yelling at him, saying this was the ring costume she wore on January 4 at the Tokyo Dome on the biggest match of her life, and the costume had so many memories for her, and it was like her life. She yelled at Kai and basically slapped his hat off his head because at first he wasn't apologetic. She last wore the outfit on the January 19 show in Tokyo and wore an older outfit on the January 26 show. She had confided in friends that something happened on the show and she was worried that the public would not like the way she came off. There was a report that Kai and Kimura had made up but that it didn't air on the show, and due to COVID-19 his show shut down production, so this was the lasting impression of her. She was bombarded with hate over social media, whether no more filming of episodes. The show had continued on Fuji Television with the final episode on May 19th before this week's episode, and the rest of the season was cancelled, but new footage had not been shot in a few months, plus her regular routine of wrestling was shut down and taken away. It may have taken away a means to cope with the depression, and things got much worse. It should be noted that all the negative messages, including her getting messages daily saying she should die, came from Terrace House viewers and not from the wrestling fan side. But a tiny but hurtful percentage of wrestling fans are no different, which why this touched such a nerve in wrestling, particularly among women performers. She was constantly being told if her costume meant so much to her, why did she leave it in the washing machine? There were fans who sided with her as well, who saw that the frustrations between the two had been building, and that Kai shouldn't have just nonchalantly put his clothes in and then put everything in a dryer without noticing it was her unique wrestling gear. Others were negative to her about leaving her gear in the washer and that she shouldn't have been so rude. It got to the point where Kimura disabled all comments on her Instagram because she was getting so much hate. In a later episode, Kai left the house and tried to make up with her by paying her the costs of making a new outfit. When he left the house, everyone gave him a goodbye hug except her, which also villainized her since to a lot of the women viewers, he was a popular character. Terrace House is a tamer version of the type of shows where good-looking young men and women are put together with the idea of people watching romances and drama. The show was in its 5th season and titled Terrace House Tokyo 2019 to 2020. Instead of drinking parties and exotic locations, it's people who want to become bigger celebrities in a house doing mundane things on a daily basis, more like real life: grocery shopping, cooking, cleaning, going to restaurants, watching TV and exploring each other's day jobs. The cast members come and go, but it's always 3 women and 3 men, young, good-looking, and if one leaves, a member of the same sex will replace them. The show had great critical acclaim in both the US and Japan, where it was said to be far more real than most reality shows, and sometimes was called a reality show that will appeal to people who hate reality shows. But the idea is romances still spring up. Kimura was focused on in an episode where all the cast members came to watch a Stardom show. She then explained what pro wrestling was to the other cast members afterwards. She talked about the struggles of working as a woman wrestler, misconceptions about women wrestlers, and her struggles with balancing her unique job and real life. There are no scripts, but producers do come up with storylines. The cast is not in the house full-time, but usually 2 or 3 days per week, and when they are together, the producers tell the cast what they are looking for. They are told they want romances, but the cast members often come up with their own romances through real life, as opposed to the romances being scripted. While this was not the case in the season she was on, but it came out in previous seasons that cast members would get a 50,000 yen, $466 US, bonus for kissing scenes. I was told if I become famous or join Terrace House, receiving slander was unavoidable, and it's the tax of being a celebrity. Posted Ryo Taotari, who was a cast member with Kimura, before leaving the show in February. But is it really right? Honestly speaking, I receive lots of slander every day. Other members are in agony too. Emika Mizokoshi, who is also on the show with Kimura, said she also received messages telling her to die. I was also slandered after joining Terrace House and was hurt, said Mizokoshi on Instagram. But we are on TV, are all humans and have feelings. Words can be deadly weapons. We have to end this trend where you can say anything to so-called famous people. It was told to us from someone close to her that they knew the negative social media response was bothering Kimura and that in recent weeks it had gotten worse. However, nobody had any sign her depression reached the level it did. Kimura at first came across like a very nice young woman, similar to comments from foreign wrestlers who worked with her and said how sweet she was, how she loved to help them while they were in a foreign country and loved to practice her English with them. She could speak English very clearly, but only certain words and phrases, and did not have a complete understanding of the language. B. Priestley from AEW, who lives in Japan most of the year with Will Ospreay, considered Kimura as one of her best friends. Kimura expressed when she joined the show that she wanted people to learn to like women's pro wrestling through her. She said that she didn't have much experience with boys growing up and had trouble expressing her real feelings for boys she had a crush on. That played out during her time on the show, a cute shyness, but sometimes that inexperience manifested itself more negatively in front of the cameras. At times she came across immature and complaining, and cried on the show. Some labeled her a crybaby. Instead of being able to be shown growing from that experience, the show stopped filming and that was the last the public saw of her, and the negative comments continued. It seemed to be a cocktail of many things. The bullying from childhood leading to insecurity, her wanting to become a mainstream star to make women's wrestling popular again like it was more than 25 years earlier. A television show that emphasized her weaknesses on screen, perhaps the pressures of knowing that she was chosen to be the person who's with the focal point of a company aggressively trying to bring back to glory days of the past under new ownership. And trying to live up to that status while perceiving she wasn't coming across well on the television show. And then COVID-19 came, shutting down both the filming of the television show and her work as a pro wrestler, where she got the positive reinforcement from the crowd constantly for her ability to shine as a performer in front of a live audience. Late at night on the morning of May 23rd in Japan, May 22nd in the US, Kimura posted images of her arm that she had self-mutilated, which was covered by her ring costume when she had wrestled. She was there with her pet kitten, and basically did a farewell note on both Twitter and Instagram. On Twitter she wrote nearly 100 frank opinions every day. "I couldn't deny they hurt me. Die, you are disgusting, you should disappear. I believe these things about myself more than they did. Thank you, Mother, for the gift of life. My whole life I wanted to be loved. Thank you to everyone who supported me, I love you all. I'm sorry for being weak." On Instagram she posted photos of her with her pet cat. Whether directed at her cat or her friends was not clear, which said, "Goodbye, I love you, have fun and live a long time. I'm sorry." This drew a ton of immediate attention throughout the US pro wrestling community, with people obviously panicking and questioning what was going on. In Japan, where everyone was asleep, people in that community were not at first aware of it. Kaori Hosako Kairi-sane had either seen the posts herself or been alerted immediately. She called up Stardom founder and CEO Rossi Ogawa, and I believe Jungle Kiona. It was Kiona who rushed to the apartment that Kimura lived alone in, but it was too late. Sponichi News in Japan reported that at around 4 a.m., which would be 3 p.m. on May 22 Eastern Time, some fire engines and an ambulance rushed into her apartment. Her death was believed to be a suicide due to the ingestion of hydrogen sulfide. The Koto Police Department's Metropolitan Department acknowledged a hydrogen sulfide fatality at 4 a.m., but further details were not released at the request of the family. According to police sources in the Japanese media, Kimura was found on her bed with a plastic bag covering her head. A container of what was believed to have been hydrogen sulfide was found nearby. Several different suicide notes were found in the room. There was a piece of paper attached to the door that read, "Toxic gas being generated," according to Kyoto News. There was another note addressed to her mother saying, "Thank you for giving birth to me." The news of her death hit the US about 9 hours later, as it was 12:10 a.m. Eastern Time when Stardom reported, "We are very sorry to report that our Hana Kimura has passed away. Please be respectful and allow time for things to process, and keep your thoughts and prayers with her family and friends. We appreciate your support during this difficult time." The kitten named Courage, which means fried chicken ball, because Kimura thought he looked like a fried chicken ball, was being taken care of in the Stardom wrestlers' dormitory. "For everyone who cheered, befriended and loved Hana, I am sorry I could not protect her," wrote her mother, Kyoko Kimura. "I am sorry we now have this painful memory. If you are in pain, Hana will be in pain, too. Please keep the cheerful memory of Hana in your hearts. She was a wonderful and gentle soul," said New Japan Pro Wrestling in an official statement. "Our most heartfelt and deepest condolences go to her family, friends and fans at this time.